Welcome to Access Granted, the podcast powered by Ablr, a full-service disability inclusion organization. I'm your host, Mike Iannelli, and today we have a truly special episode. I'm joined by John Samuel, my co-founder and CEO of Ablr. John's vision is the driving force behind this podcast, and we're excited to share the story of how Ablr came to life, from our journey together to the challenges we've faced in building an inclusive business. I'm so honored to have John Samuel here today to share his story, and can't wait for you to meet my partner and dearest friend.
I got to tell you, I got a special guest today. I'm pretty excited about this. John, well, we'll call him Johnny Sams. John Samuel, the co-founder, my partner, and our CEO of Ablr, is joining us today, which is an incredible day because John and I haven't really had an opportunity to talk much, truthfully, over the last 4 years. John, thanks for being here, my friend, and I'm honored to be here on this journey with you, buddy.
No, I'm so thankful to be here, and I love you so much, and this is so exciting because I love hearing your voice, talking to our customers, and really kind of getting your own perspective, which is really exciting.
I was overwhelmed with like all the things. And I was like, what do I ask John? Do we talk about Ablr? And I will tell you this, I want to give Kim Casey, our director of accessibility, and I believe our heartbeat of our company. We were talking this morning and I was like, what should I talk about? There's so many things. There's the book, there's the TED Talk, there's this whole journey that you've been dealing with your entire life with retinitis pigmentosa and how you found out about it, and then your whole life and hiding it and all those things I want to talk about. And then there's the Ablr story. But here's the one thing I want to start with is, a lot of people don't know, but, Ablr wasn't always Ablr. And Ablr started off as something different. And it was a journey that you started. And I want to see if you talk a little bit about the old school days of LCI Tech and the struggles, because we're here today on a podcast talking about this stuff, and we've got GAD coming next week, and we've got 150 people showing up and supporting this journey that we're on, and this movement is becoming just a blessing. But it wasn't always that way, and your journey getting to the place, I'd like to share that. So talk to us a little bit about that journey with LC Tech, how you got there, what was your vision, what were some of the struggles you were dealing with?
Yeah, for sure. When I first came to LCI, I was tasked with one thing: create a business that would create upward mobility for people who are blind in tech. And it's a very broad thing to do. Like, what do you do? How do you create upward mobility for people who are blind? And so I was even challenging, like going through my own challenge of losing my sight, accepting it. So I was going through that challenge myself. So I was like, what are the things I'm going through? What are the challenges I was facing to find my own job? And so when I started thinking about that, I realized that the first thing I struggled with was accessibility. I couldn't even apply for jobs online. And so when I was, losing my sight, trying to apply to jobs, I'd have to ask my wife, Nicole, can you please fill out this application for me? At the time, we were just, brought in our first baby, Eli, who was just months old. And Nicole was,
guy.
Just a sweet little guy. And, Nicole was nursing and going to work full time. And, and that's the thing you don't want to do. It's like, hey, baby, can you please fill out this application for me? And as we know, when you're applying for jobs, you need to apply to tons of jobs. You can't just be applying to one at a time. And that's what I struggled with. So I was like, well, let's figure out a way if we can address this digital accessibility barrier, that'll help get people into jobs. And so that's something that people who are blind can actually bring to the table, is native screen reader user testing. And so we started that way. And so we started doing testing, and we were getting, $50 invoices. It was really like struggling, right? Because I didn't know how to value this. I didn't know what value are we bringing. For me at the time, it was like, well, this is something we can do. And if we can get some money, that's better than nothing. And so, I started to learn about marketing, digital marketing firms, and seeing the work that they did and how they had clients. So I was like, well, this is perfect. If we can start partnering with a digital marketing firm, they have the clients, we have the accessibility services. I don't have to do the selling, because that's something I struggled with, because all I wanted to do was raise awareness for disability inclusion, why we need to be doing this. And so how can we get companies who need the service, our services? And so that's really what it kind of drove me down, going to digital marketing firms. And that led to connecting with the Walk West, which brought me to you.
Yeah. What a journey that. What a journey, man. I kind of probably tell people every day, but like the first, I still remember, I don't know if you remember the first time we met, but it was a rough day for me getting out of bed. But when I showed up, this smiling Johnny Sams shows up, and I'm like, oh goodness. I remember walking down the hallway, and we were talking earlier with Jeb, but that tour was just incredible.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little about the tour, because a lot of folks don't know the story of LCI and what LCI does. But there's lots of reasons why it's important, but the main reason why in this case it's important is because you and I came together at LCI. I tell people all the time, I think the Ablr story is divine. And I do. I really, really do. And so talk to me about the tour.
Yeah. So I think taking a step back, how I found LCI was I was living up in DC at the time, and I was working for an investment firm, and that company folded, and I was out of a job. And as I mentioned, Nicole and I had just welcomed Eli, and we're living up there. I had no job. We just had a baby. We just had built a house in DC and was struggling. I was struggling personally. I was going through a really hard time because of my sight loss, just not being able to have that confidence to say that I can have another job. And so that's when I heard about this software that was developed at SAS that was designed by a gentleman named Ed Summers, who had retinitis pigmentosa as well and lived in Cary, North Carolina. And up until that point, I had never met a blind person. And this software that Ed had created was designed to help people who are blind and low vision visualize graphs and charts using sounds. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And so I tried to get in touch with Ed for 2-3 months, no luck. And then finally, Nicole was like, well, if he can live in Cary, maybe we can too. So we found a house online, told my folks, they got so excited. And my dad immediately jumped in the car. He never thought I was coming home. He started driving and, and he's driving down the road and talking to us on the Bluetooth and starts yelling at something. I'm like, what are you doing, Dad? And he's like, oh, there's a blind guy in the road. Maybe it's the guy you're trying to get in touch with. I was like, Dad, please don't yell at blind people on the road. Don't yell at anyone on the road. And he's like, all right, gets out of the car, walks to this poor guy and says, are you Ed Summers? And the guy goes, yes, I am. And my dad goes, oh, my son's trying to reach you, and puts the phone in the poor guy's ear. And after apologizing to Ed, he agreed to meet me, came down that next weekend. And, I talk about how that 30-minute conversation turned into 3 hours. And Ed introduced me to the world of accessibility. And he also showed me that my career wasn't over. But as I was looking for jobs, Ed was talking about you need to be open about your disability. You need to reach out to these companies who have DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. This is 2017. And so I started doing that and talking openly about my vision loss, and not a single one of those companies got back to me. And I started thinking, I was like, with my education, my experience, and my privilege, if I can't find a job, what about other blind people? And so, because I just didn't feel like I checked the box that they wanted to check. And so I started thinking about this, and I was like, what can I do to create opportunities for other people? And typically everywhere I go, I have a pair of sunglasses. And
Good shades, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to get to your other shades here in a minute, but go ahead.
And so, I wanted to make sunglasses, but, I had been inspired by this company called Tom's Shoes, which is a social enterprise where you buy a pair of shoes and they give a pair of shoes to someone in need. So I wanted to have sunglasses made, but I didn't want to just give a pair to someone who needed them. I wanted to have them made by people who are blind. And so my thought process was that if you give someone a job, you give them hope, life, this generational impact. Mm-hmm. And so that's when Ed introduced me to Jeffrey Hotting, the president of LCI. And when I was talking to Jeffrey, LCI is the largest employer of people who are blind in the country, and they're a manufacturing company. All I wanted to do was learn about manufacturing with folks who are blind. And Jeffrey kept talking about wanting to create upward mobility for people who are blind. And that's what brought me down to start LCI Tech. And that was kind of the origins of it. And so I remember the first time coming into LCI, I was taking a tour with Dwayne Gilbertson, who's the chief revenue officer of LCI. He was walking me through the manufacturing. And at this time, I was starting to lose my sight. I really couldn't see much in front of me. And I was doing a sighted guide when you put an elbow out, and I'm holding on to Dwayne's elbow, and he's guiding me through this manufacturing facility, which is 240,000 square feet of amazing space.
It's
where
great place.
Over 2,000 products are being made, and it's amazing. There's hundreds of people working there. And I just remember walking through and hearing the collars of the dogs, the canes hitting the sides of the panels, and people just working. People working. I could hear the laughter. I could hear these sounds that I never thought possible. I didn't think people who are blind could be, have jobs, have successful careers like this. And it brought me to tears. And as I was walking through that, it was, you talk about those divine interventions. It was divine intervention for me to hear those sounds. And to this day, as we've launched Ablr, we've done, we've been very successful doing what we do. Every day I feel accountable to those folks, because it's those people who work in that manufacturing facility who gave us our start. And for that, I'll always be grateful.
Amen to that, my friend. Yeah, I felt the same way when I went through, and I tell folks all the time the story, but I remember after the tour, and you had the screen reader, and at the time it was like fast, like it was. I can hear it now, but at the time I was like, what the heck was that noise? And you're like, oh, that's my screen reader. That's how I keep up. I remember you saying that's how I keep up with business. Like you can see, I can't, so I have to hear as fast as you can interpret information. So that's why it's so fast. And I remember that moment, it was just such an awakening for me, because my background, Johnny, as you know, has been in advertising and marketing. I've done some fun things, but I built a lot of content, a lot of websites, a lot of mobile apps. And, it wasn't even discussed. Like ADA, I didn't really truthfully know what that was. I mean, I knew what it was, but I didn't know what it was, you know. Accessibility, didn't know what that was. And so my whole mindset was very, I'd say, selfish. It just wasn't aware. And that moment when that sound of the screen reader popped, it was just a moment of clarity for me, and truthfully, I felt bad. I felt like, man, I've been doing this for 20 some years. How much content did I produce that wasn't accessible? And that was a moment when I realized, oh goodness, like I need, and you and I talk about this all the time. You were in a dark place.
Yep.
I was in a dark place. But that was sort of an awakening for me to say, wow, like there's more to life than what I'm doing. And I was searching for meaning and purpose. And, you and I have talked a lot, but that search for purpose, that search for meaning, I just felt incredibly unfulfilled. That screen reader, man, just changed my life. I met this guy and he's doing something amazing. I think I can help him. And I want to help him. And, we struggled in the beginning with that too. Cause I remember we created our little algorithm, and then we tried to do some things together as partnerships. And I remember the day it was like, we're not going to get there unless we build something that people can really attach to, a mission, a purpose, a visual experience of what we're trying to do. I just think the story of how Ablr kind of came about was really a beautiful story. And all of a sudden it's like, we built something that you were trying to create, but all of a sudden now it's here. Yeah. We've got a brand, and what are we going to do with it? So talk a little bit about that.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting because this was the second time for me to launch a business. So the first time was in Cameroon, and, I built this company just as a single person to then becoming a multi-million-dollar company. And at that time, I was trying to keep my vision loss a secret. And I was building a team around me that would kind of fill in the gaps. Because again, we always talk about you want to have smarter people around you. And that was one of the things, is building a team around you that were smarter than you. And we were very successful doing that. And then, when I was in DC working for another startup investment firm, I saw how things, it doesn't matter what your pedigree is. Like the CEO of that company had a Harvard MBA. He had all the successful, resume, but I saw how that business didn't take off. Even if you have the best mission, the best kind of idea, you realize that if you don't have the right team or the right leadership, it's not going to be successful. And so when we started LCI Tech, I felt like we had a really good, product. We had really worked on getting our services, really doing it well. We just didn't know how to get that word out. We didn't know how to get it to our clients. There was a lot that we were missing. And so, when meeting you and launching this together, you filled a gap that I knew I couldn't do. You filled what I didn't think I could do. You completed me, right? You completed what we needed. And you had something, you saw how this could really take off in a space that I didn't know, in this whole kind of talking to the clients, because you had that experience. You had experience working in the advertising. You had that experience working in the digital marketing. And that was something that we really needed. I didn't understand the value of a brand, right? I thought, if you have a good product, that's all you need. But understanding how you put the whole package together, and that's what is important. And so, I often talk about how, the E1 timepiece, my watch, showed me that accessibility can be sexy. But meeting you showed me that you were the person who could help bring this to the world, that accessibility can be sexy, because you saw that. You saw how it could be done. And I think that is evident in our brand, the Ablr brand, how beautiful and sexy it is. And then also with, the way that we deliver our services and products to our clients. I think you filled that gap. And then, bringing in Kim Casey and really being able to level up our services, and that's a beautiful thing.
Unreal thing.
We talk about this three-legged stool. And you talk about the challenges, right? One, you have to humble yourselves. We all had to humble ourselves because if the team is going to work, we had to work together. And so when coming into the thing, saying, oh, we've been doing LCI tech, but we weren't successful. And that I had to humble myself and say, look, you need other people. You need other people if you want to take this to the next level. And when you're so mission driven, sometimes you're just so focused on, I want to help people who are blind. But sometimes you need to take a step back to move forward. And, it's kind of taking a step back saying, we need to start from the scratch. Let's, even if we think we have a great service right now, we need to revamp, we need to redo our products, we need to revamp our product offerings. And that took a little time, right? To accept each other. And then we had to find out where we all fall in the team. And we figured out that we have this three-legged stool and it works really successful for us.
Yeah, I think what's humbling is I say our clients because the people that we work with we always say to people like, you're gonna be friends with us. We know we care about them. We care about their lives. We care about their successes. We care. Caring is always that sort of word. Like sometimes it's like, oh, we care. It's like, man, do you really though? Like when you go home at night, is it not keeping you up, but is it in your spirit? Is it in your subconscious? Are you thinking about ways to be a better person, ways to improve yourselves? And I think leadership is one of those things. I struggled coming, and I think I had the biggest ego. I'm sure most people hearing this now will probably say, yeah, you're the biggest ego. But the ego is all about insecurities. It's about all the things you're not. But coming to the realization that you really can't do things alone. It was like this mission of proving something to someone, but in reality, when you do take a step back and you look across our team, it's like, my God, it's like they're just incredible human beings, and it started with Kim and then it just led to the whole crew. And it's like, boy, everybody in our team fills a gap. And in some ways it's not necessarily a gap. I'm saying that like it's like a puzzle. We all have a piece, and when we all fit in together, it is a beautiful thing to see. Like that's you guys hire great people. The culture that we have here, the talent that we need, the kind of person that comes into Ablr. And we've talked about this before. Distractions for a small organization can cripple you. And so the way we look at bringing on people, it's a process. It's a big process, but you can see looking across the board on who's on the team. It's like, okay, we did this methodically. We did this right. I remember always pushing like, John, I need resources, man. You're like, just be patient. We gotta let the forest clear up a little bit so we can, I don't know that whole, but we started to see that. But I love the team we have, and I love the mission, and I love what everyone's doing. Let me keep talking about this Ablr story because there's a couple new things that are happening with Ablr, and I want to talk a little bit about that because as the company is growing, and we started off as an accessibility company, which and now we've got into a lot of training and awareness and education, and now we've got this wonderful program, which really has been a mission and a vision of yours from the day we met. And I remember you always telling me, like, Mike, I think our future, when we think about it, I think about accessibility, and I think, God, if our world isn't fully accessible in 5 years, I just don't feel like we've done our job. And I think every accessibility company out there would agree with that. Like, we need to do better. We need to do better faster. And hopefully at some point, this is just an implemented best practice, and it is the way it is. But after that, there's so much more. And it's not just making sure that the site's accessible so you don't get sued, or it's because our higher ups want to make sure, we can make more money. This is about like human kindness, like just basic foundational, like love and understanding. And we always talk about inclusion and exclusion. And it's like, talk to me about inclusion, because DEI itself, some will say it's under pressure right now. And it is. I mean, and I think, but I don't think it's fairly so. And I'd like to hear your perspective on inclusion and when you think of inclusion, what do you think of?
When I think about inclusion, I think about the word belonging, right? We all want people to feel like they belong, no matter what background experience you have. And so that's something that, I'll be actually doing a presentation next week at AccessU, the conference, and giving a keynote there about future-proofing DEI and accessibility. Because you're right, DEI almost has this, it's under pressure. Companies are like, oh, we don't need to focus on this. But when you start to think about it in the way of like, do our employees feel like they belong? Do our customers feel like they belong part of our organization, like that they want to keep coming back? When you shift that focus to the sense of belonging, then you see the business case for it. Again, I think you do need to think about the business case for DEI. There truly is. And it's not just about a specific group of people that you're trying to make sure they feel belong. You want everyone to feel like they belong. And so when we think about accessibility crosses everybody. Everybody needs accessibility. There's not a single person out there who doesn't need accessibility or who doesn't.
And we're all aging into the disability reality-wise. We're all going to deal with it.
Yeah, and we're one step away from falling down, hurting ourselves, and needing it, or or there's somebody in our family, our friends that needs it. And so, and our customers, right? I mean, we talk about these untapped markets. The disability community is an untapped market. You market to people like myself, you're going to get a new client that is going to be loyal, that's going to keep coming back, buying things. So from a business perspective, we really need to be thinking about DEI and accessibility. And so when we think about future-proofing that really is about how do we get more people trained up so they fill gaps on our teams, that they're bringing unique perspectives to our table and helping us create new products, new services, and and be able to help us to reach out to a new demographic of customers. So again, it is the right thing to do. I truly believe it, but I also believe there's a business case for it, and that as leaders of companies, we do need to think about that.
As we wrap up, I want to thank John Samuel for sharing the story behind Ablr. His passion and commitment to disability inclusion is truly what shaped Ablr and is the foundation for the Access Granted podcast. To our listeners, let's keep championing inclusivity, celebrating diversity, and supporting those who drive positive change. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, let's continue working toward a more accessible and inclusive world.